Hello, you're listening to the Robot Wars History Podcast, a podcast where we track the development of Robot Wars and the British combat robotics scene in general by looking at key bots and teams. I'm your host Luke, and with me as always are my co-host Dan.
Hello.
And Nick.
Hey.
And today we'll be looking at Mortis.
Well, this is probably the last of the really good bots of Series 1, I think. I mean, the others that made it to the final were decent, but Mortis was, it didn't need too many changes going forward until its ultimate retirement at the end of Series 4.
Yeah, I mean, it was an astonishingly sophisticated robot for the time, even if it usually didn't do too well. Just the technology in it alone was very impressive.
Yeah, and I think the producers at Mentor fucking knew that. They loved this thing.
Definitely.
Before they were creaming themselves over Hypnodisc and Razor, before they spent all of Series 9 talking about how amazing Carbide was, Mortis was Mentor's waifu.
Until Razor came along.
Razor must have been so good in the qualifiers for them to hype it up right from the beginning of its appearance in Series 2. But we'll get to that when we cover Razor come Series 5 time. They apparently they always focused on like how expensive all of the kit that went into making Mortis was. Supposedly it cost £40,000 to make and it was supposed to be worth like £250,000. It actually cost £500. Most of the parts in it were donated. So.
Well, I mean that's the benefits of being teached at the University of Cambridge.
Yeah. The team was Random Violence Technologies, which only consistently had Rob Knight and Arthur Chilcott, and then the third person just changed every series. Yeah, they had Chris Salisbury in Series 1, Ben Impey in Series 2, Ben Gordon in Series 3, and Paul Ford in Series 4.
Mortis began as a tracked Axbot, and unlike Kilotron, who we covered last time, and basically every other Axbot who would follow, Mortis was electrically powered, and instead of going for big disabling blows, it just hit constantly, just nagged away, like a death by 1,000 cuts, basically.
Or dents.
Yeah, it was very rarely. It very rarely caused actual death of anything.
In Series 1, I think the only thing it actually damaged was Leebot's arm.
I mean, I remember on the old Mortis website, which is still up surprisingly, they actually had a whole thing in their Q&A section of, would Mortis's axe kill a human? And the answer was apparently so.
Yeah, but things that will kill people will not necessarily kill robots.
So we've learned from the great teacher, Mr. Psycho.
I mean, if you swing a Tanto knife on the end of a metal bar into someone's face, it's gonna do a lot of fucking damage. But if you swing it into a robot, doesn't necessarily mean it's going to go through metal armor.
Though, to be fair, with Rob Knight driving, he'll probably miss anyway, so I wouldn't worry about my skin.
And if Ben Impey takes over, it'll spend all of its attempt attacking you just like beating up one of those access ramps outside of a public building.
It was a rather disappointing axe for something that was Japanese style blade.
Oh, Jonathan!
1,000 times folded steel.
It could cut bullets in half, you know. Yeah, it's not like lead is a really soft fucking metal.
The other significant thing about Mortis when it first appeared was its armor. I mean, when you look at the standard of most Series 1 bots, it was like plastic or very thin aluminum. Mortis came armoured in layers of carbon fibre, Kevlar, and laminated titanium.
Pardon me, Luke, but did you just say aluminum? There is an extra I in that word.
Oh god, I've been infected.
He's done it.
Good god.
He went there.
Oh, I'm ashamed to my country. But no, I mean, I can imagine being like No Sharky or something, seeing like Kilotron and Barry, and then these Cambridge alumni come through with this like sleek looking, like very solid bot that you must have been like, oh my god, thank God.
Yeah.
My career hasn't turned into a joke.
Mortis had already been had Mortis been competing in like American Robot Wars at this point? I think it had.
No, Mortis appeared in BattleBots, but that was quite a bit
Yeah,
after
that was like Series 3 time, wasn't it?
Yeah, because I think it had the flipper by then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Rob Knight was riding on top of it as he drove around a car park or something. But,
so in its gauntlet, Mortis charged through the side, a different route to what most bots usually took, but it kind of screwed up by turning sideways and immediately got set up on by all the house bots.
Yeah, it did not complete the gauntlet due to the house robots just ganging up on it, and only reached a distance of 7.40 meters.
This was probably the strangest gauntlet run in Series 1. I mean, there was some special ones in there, but why did Shunt not let go? Why did it just hold Mortis in place the whole time?
I mean, it was Series 1, Series 2. The house robots had no idea what the hell they were doing.
No, but at the same time, it's like the producers obviously want to promote Mortis, but it's like, nah, Shunt wants his moment of glory as well, so it's going to use its axe to just hold Mortis there, and then Bash kind of blocks its path too.
I mean, the producers, it's not as if the producers make sense. I mean, Roadblock's the returning champions in Series 2. Twice they just got pinned by the Sentinel, which refused to move, and nearly knocked them out.
Yeah, I mean, let's be fair. Shunt's axe holding Mortis is probably the most that axe ever inconvenienced anyone.
Yeah, I don't know if that was so much the axe as just Shunt. Did Shunt just park in front of it, didn't it?
It was behind it.
Yeah, it was holding.
Oh, right.
Yeah, and then Matilda and I think it was Dead Metal were attacking it from the front. Or I know it was Bash, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
But,
doing nothing, obviously.
Yeah. Well, it redeemed itself in the trials though, which was British Bulldog.
Yeah, it just breezed by.
It just drove past all the house robots in the blocks, and then went and attacked Matilda.
Probably the single worst house robot rebellion of all time. It literally just poked Matilda a bit. And
then got ganged up on by all the others.
Yeah, and its axe had already broke, I think, before it even started. But British Bulldog was a weird game. You just had some pyramids in the middle, and then some really, really unaware house robots. I mean, was it Leebot that went through at like 0.5 mile an hour? It just chugged through to the end. That was sensational.
It's not like any of them actually needed to do all that though, because fucking Detonator just didn't work.
David Crosby's had enough.
Yeah, the fucking rage quit. Like he couldn't handle the stress because he wasn't able to be up there and steal the controller.
Series 1 Mortis continued to prove itself in its battle against Leebot, where its axe did. I think this is like the first time we see its axe do anything really.
Yeah,
and it like just kind of constantly taps away and actually dents Leebot's terrible armor.
And eventually it crumples their. What even the fuck was that weapon supposed to do?
I don't know. It was like a battering ram or something.
It looked like it would just fucking poke things.
Biohazard would be proud.
And obviously that's when we got one of Jonathan's incredibly excited reactions to Leebot getting some dents in its top.
Oh no, I'm not going there. That one's had enough promo.
I must wonder what Jonathan thinks a pepper seller looks like. Because do his ones just not have holes in them? Are they just mildly?
No, it's just dented.
He just starts shaking it and nothing comes out, and so he convinces himself that it's there just through sheer force of enthusiasm.
Lovely pepper on my meal.
I mean, it got pushed into Mortis managed to get pushed into the CPZ, but then managed to drove back out and didn't even use the axe. The axe wasn't broken at this point; it was still working, but they just sort of wedged under Leebot and tipped it over, and it was Series 1, so nothing had a stream X, so the fight was immediately over after that.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure how the axe mechanism actually broke, so I guess something must have happened in the pits or something.
Yeah, because it's not working.
For its next fight against the Cyclops, it was reduced. It was basically reduced to a battering ram.
Yeah, but that was better than fucking than Leebot's battering ram because it was secured in place and didn't have a fucking hinge in it.
This is one of the. I feel like this is probably the first example of a really dubious judge's decision because Mortis absolutely bossed this fight.
Yeah, it struggled a little bit when it went into the CPZ and got stuck on the spikes, but then it got under a Cyclops, drove it around twice, and then manages to get it into the CPZ, but then Shunt just attacks Mortis instead. Whereas like you've gone into the CPZ, so fuck you. Whereas in like later seasons, if a robot went into a CPZ pushing another robot, then normally the robot that got pushed would be the one that got attacked, because that was like actually that's a legitimate tactic. Whereas in this case, it was just you're in the CPZ, so we get to completely destroy you now.
Yeah, I feel like the judges must have really counted the getting stuck on the spikes in the CPZ. They must have counted that as like bad control or something, because there's no other legitimate criteria by which Mortis loses that fight.
This was a weird fight because although there was two robots in the arena, Mortis was the only robot winning and losing points. Recyclops didn't lose any because it didn't drive anywhere bad like Mortis, but it didn't win any either because it never once did anything to Mortis. I mean, I think it's one of these fights, as Noel Sharkey alluded to on Twitter, that they had to really make up the rules in the earlier series. So it's one of those where you can kind of sympathise with the judges for being like, oh, well, Mortis only came in with a good drive or two, and its bad driving was really, really notable. So maybe they say that the House Robot's involvement is a key thing there. I don't know. Obviously, in the future, it's considered a really bad decision, and it still is, but you can at least kind of understand some pointers as to why it was given what it was.
I guess so, because I mean, this was like, what, the second episode?
Yeah, it was Heat Bay.
The first judge's decision, full stop.
Yeah, they just didn't really... Yeah, they were just making it up as they went along, basically, at this point.
Yeah. I mean, as almost a consolation prize, it won the Best Engineered Award, which it
absolutely deserved.
Oh yeah, there was nothing else in Series 1 that was even close to being as well made as Mortis.
Yeah, Psycho Sprout in an unlucky second place, obviously.
Yeah, we can't forget the amazing contributions of a plastic ball with a remote control car inside.
Okay, but Dan, that's omnidirectional movement. Do you know how sophisticated that is for the time?
Move over, Razor. This is the real pioneer.
I mean, how much the judges and producers are impressed with Mortis was clear, because when it returned in Series 2, it was seeded second, above even Cassius and Chaos, who reached the grand final last time.
And Bodyhammer, who was officially the runner-up.
It returned with new armour, and this time it enclosed the tracks this time, and a faster axe apparently.
It was also supposed to have the flipper, but it wasn't ready in time for the series, so they had to stick with just the axe.
I mean, if they had that flipper then, good God.
Yeah, If they had the flipper then they could have gone really far. I mean, as it is, Series 2 is still Mortis' best series. They made it to the semis. Its Gauntlet run, it actually completed the Gauntlet this time.
And it knocked out Matilda's camera, which I didn't realise the house robots had back then.
Yeah, and it attacks the house robots, particularly Matilda and Shunt. Jonathan called Shunt Bash, because they dunked it down the pit, but fortunately it completing the gauntlet counted.
Its trial wasn't really anything remarkable. Matilda got underneath them, but then Mortis just dug in.
Yeah, it managed to go a distance of 6.1 meters in the jousting event, which was basically just reverse tug of war.
Matilda took like an absolute age to angle herself to move Mortis back, but the joust was basically, if you weren't a good shover, you could just hope to get halfway and fall off there and you might get through. It really wasn't that interesting at all.
Yeah,
and this was another one of those okay joust instances.
Unless you were that one bot that somehow managed to get shoved back behind the starting position.
Oh, Rottweiler and Challenger, I think it was.
Oh god, that happened twice.
I think even Prometheus as well went like backwards 0.1 meter. Jesus Christ.
Yeah, you can kind of see in this case why they stopped the trials being part of the main competition, because the fact that it was always like a different thing for each episode meant that some robots just got something that they couldn't handle at all, and others got something that they could easily go through, even if they weren't really fit to continue.
Yeah, it was good fun to have them there as like the gap between the gauntlet and the arena, but yeah, there was a few instances where robots would just get through just because their design was okay enough to kind of hold its own in the trial, but at that stage, after the gauntlet, you kind of think, ideally you'd want another set of battles then. I mean, obviously there's an odd number of robots, but the trial itself feels far too situational for a lot of designs, as you say, so... And that probably was one of the reasons why.
This is why I'm glad that they ultimately just went for pure fights in Series 3.
Yeah.
I think the show got a lot better for it after that.
And then after its trial, it faced Ramesses II, another tracked bot. And Ramesses seemed more powerful than Mortis, like able to outpush it. But it was a victim of the arena, as so many bots were in Series 2 and 3.
Yeah, Ramesses kind of managed to push Mortis back into the PPZ, but then the house robot just ganked Ramesses instead. Because it's the fucking house robot. Given the hard-on that the producers had for Mortis, they may have been put up to that by the producers. Just like, I
don't know. I mean, Ramesses got hit by a floor spike first, and that kind of like knocked him on the back foot, and then I guess after that, the producers just saw red and.
Ramesses is a really interesting one because it's a decent little robot, bar the weapon, and if it had an actual weapon of some form, even like a lifter at the front or an actual axe that even did little dents, it could have done okay. It held its own here somewhat, so I mean, Mortis was just it was one of those fights where it wasn't going to be able to puncture Ramesses, so it had to just rely on the good old Series 2 rules of eventually someone's going to get killed by a house robot, or the arena.
I mean, Mortis chalked their drive problems up to interference, like radio problems or something. But they made it to they were obviously through to the heat final where they ended up against Oblivion, which was much easier for them to handle than Ramesses was, really.
I mean, even though Oblivion had a lower wedge, Mortis was easily able to just push him around and just kept on hacking away with the axe. It did get pushed into Dead Metal's claws, but the house robots just attacked both robots again, and they gave the win to Mortis, even though it looked like both robots still looked to be working, but it didn't go. It didn't go to the judges. Only one of the bots was filled with holes, and it wasn't Mortis.
Yeah, true. That's one of those weird early series things where sometimes they just they'd give a victory to a robot that hadn't clearly immobilized its opponent without even taking it to the judges in the first place, just because there was no way the judges would rule against it. Yes, it was through to the series semi-finals, and there Rob Knight made it clear that he wanted to attack the Sentinel. He called it a JCB, which is what it was, but yeah. I can understand wanting to attack the Sentinel, because fuck the Sentinel.
I mean, Mortis drove over the ramp and ended up on its side and was just hopefully righted by Matilda.
Yeah, Shunt parked itself under the ramp to stop the ramp from going down. So Mortis just had to fucking ramp off of it. It was actually almost righting itself with its axe before Matilda managed to push it away from the wall and back onto its treads, and it reversed over the line. And then in gratitude for Matilda basically saving its gauntlet run, it attacked her.
The only way Rob Knight can work.
It's weird because Rob was one of those drivers who always went for the let's attack the house robots thing. Rex Garrett did it, and Ian Lewis did it, and Kim Davies especially did it. George did it in the Series 3 Grand Final, but he never got quite the audience love that they got for picking fights with house robots, because they were being riled up to be the bad guys and had to be hated on.
Yeah, we're about to get into this.
Oh yeah,
but the trial, very controversial.
Oh,
Mortis was set to do the pinball, but on their first run, the floor spikes, which were not meant to be on, fired and took out Mortis's track, just breaking it. And obviously, Rob Knight was rightly furious.
Yeah, but
so the production let them have another go, but Rob Knight, refusing to drive, delegated it to Ben Impey, and he got 75 points, which was enough to go through, given that Napalm had only gotten 65. But the producers, for no reason whatsoever, they counted blocks that the house robots knocked over and gave them a score of 100. This created the whole Mortis are the bad guys image for the rest of the show.
Yeah, the thing was, were those the arena hazards weren't automatic, weren't they? I think they've always been human operated.
Yeah, I think so.
So basically, the spike guy operated the spikes when he wasn't even supposed to be at his fucking station.
Yeah.
The producers decide to give Mortis another go, even though the team apparently don't want to do that, or at least Rob doesn't want to do it, because he was he's a lot more sporting than people ever gave him credit for, and in response to both of their fuck ups, they then eventually turn around and say, Mentorn eventually turn around and say, "Oh yeah, Mortis demanded a retake," even though both problems were Mentorn's own fault. So they majorly shifted the blame on that one, and then managed to turn Mortis into the whipping boy for Series 3.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they made it worse by adding the extra points, because that's what so riled up the Dartford Girls Grammar School team, because Mortis got enough to go through anyway, but they just added on extra points just to make them seem more impressive, I suppose.
The end result of this was that when they go into the arena for the next round and they go up against Panic Attack, who are the eventual champions of this series, Ben is driving again, and they barely even try. They just let themselves get shunted around and dunked in the pit.
Yeah, they were already disillusioned by this point. They were just...
Yeah. I mean, I think Mortis could have won that fight.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's a flat top for Mortis to poke tons of holes in.
Yeah. When it comes down to it, Mortis could quite easily have won Series 2, I think.
Yeah. I mean, we see an example of its kind of potential against Cassius, because I mean,
yeah, well,
okay, maybe that's putting it a bit far, because neither of them give a great account here, but still.
Yeah, I mean, they went on. They had the grudge match special, which was just Mortis and Napalm and Cassius just fighting. I mean, Mortis and Cassius, and then Mortis and Napalm. The grudge match was for the controversial decision to give Cyclops the win, and that ended when Rex managed to drive into the pit. He seems to do that a lot because he did it in the fight with Panic Attack in the grand final. He did it in this match, and he also did it when fighting Pussycat in Series 3, though apparently that was the other guy driving. But I could easily believe that Rex did it because he made a really good robot. He actually made a couple of really good robots, but he was never the fantastic driver that a lot of people seem to think he was.
I like the fight against Mortis because you see just how sporting Rex is. Because when they both end up in the pit, Cassius just kind of nudges Mortis out.
Yeah, and
too pure for this world.
Yeah, and Rob actually wanted a rematch, but to just have like a clean fight without Cassius killing itself. But that never happened. Like the only place that would have happened would have been Extreme probably, and Rex was long retired from Robot Wars over the safety issues in Series 2 and 3. That juncture.
And I mean, yeah, Mortis was gone by then too.
Well, Mortis was actually scheduled for an appearance in Extreme 1.
In a wild card.
Yeah, it was scheduled to be scheduled to be a wild card warrior battle against Axel. But the team were unable to make it, and Panic Attack took their place. So yeah, it almost came back, and they seemed to be on board with the idea, but ultimately they didn't return. They couldn't make it to the filming apparently. So,
right.
To be fair, I think Axel may have beaten it because Axel kind of did the same thing that Mortis did, just with a more refined design. Like it had a proper wedge and it had a wider flipper. So.
And I imagine Axel's beefier too.
Probably, though we didn't get to see too much of Axel, obviously, for reasons that will become apparent when we eventually discuss Wheelie Big Cheese.
But yeah, I mean, for Series 2 standards, Mortis was if not for pinball, it could have gone all the way. It was one of the best spots around.
Mortis would have been the perfect robot to have in that final four in Series 2, along with Roadblock, Cassius, and then whoever could have been the fourth robot. But those were the big three as such, and
well, it probably would have still been Killertron, wouldn't it?
Yeah, as
yeah,
such.
It would have beaten Panic Attack.
Yeah, but in terms of the four best robots in Series 2, to have Mortis, Cassius and Roadblock all in one grand final would have been great and would have summed up the early couple of series. But
oh man, imagine Mortis versus Killertron. Killertron's pickaxe just bouncing off of that titanium Kevlar carbon fiber armor, and Mortis just cleaving through that fucking plastic.
Yeah, it would probably just try and hit Mortis's armor so hard that it would completely bounce back and flip itself over, knowing Killertron.
Yeah.
But
poor Killertron.
It's a shame, going back to that Panic Attack fight quickly, it's such a shame how, although it was a great bit of driving and a surprise and shock in how the pitting happened, that could have been a genuinely entertaining fight that was really competitive, and we could have even had a pitting that came while Mortis was being really aggressive with its axe, but instead, the way Mortis going out in Series 2 is just a flat atmosphere and a random pitting. It feels really wrong. It feels like that wasn't the end of its Series 2 run because it had so much more to give, but it actually ended. I mean, we would have got it if not for that fucking spike operator. Exactly.
Yeah.
The spike was the robot that beat Mortis in Series 2. Literally, the Spike Man.
The floor dildos were a problem even before Series 3. But yeah, I mean, eventually we would get a proper Panic Attack and Mortis fight.
Thank God.
Which was one of their last appearances on the show. But we'll get to that because I think
yes.
that fight is really good, and we'll get to that in time.
But yeah, unfortunately for me, it was kind of downhill for Mortis. They returned for Series 3 with a new weapon added, an electric lifting arm which could lift 100 kilograms.
Yeah.
Which was a good investment for after seeing Cassius, it became clear that you need a stream mech, but also like a weapon that focuses on turning other bots over is very useful.
Yeah, because there's plenty of robots that don't have one.
And I mean, it used this very well in its first fight against Ming.
Yeah, well, they did. This is the series where they really amped up the let's shit on Mortis bullcrap. Like the audience are constantly fucking booing it. Poor Rob Knight just looks very bewildered every time that happens. It's just like, what the fuck is going on? They kept cutting to shots of the other teams in the pits watching these fights, and
I know it's so bewildering because I mean, like, they kind of do the same. It's like what they do in BattleBots with Derek Young, but Derek Young kind of does come off as kind of like cocky and like, yeah, I'm better than everyone or whatever. But I mean, Rob Knight was the chillest guy on earth.
Yeah, he just wanted to be there with his wonderful inventions for his controller and just get on with life. But
I love the backpack controller, and I love the fact that he upgraded it between Series 3 and 4.
Again, more like upgrades than the Robot Wars arena in the new series.
Hi-oh!
Yeah, I mean, there's never a scene where, I mean, you never once do you see any cockiness from Rob Knight. He's just constantly chewing gum and just like, yeah, we can probably beat him, probably.
Yeah, maybe we'll give it a go. You know,
it's good. He takes it so well though, because you can see in a way he loves being that heel guy, but he doesn't try to like be a really boisterous about it. He just goes along with it. He acts chill and arrogant, but he knows he's not trying to at the same time. It's really half-assed, and it's brilliant the way he does it.
Yeah. Like he would have actually. I think he would have actually fit in quite well in Extreme 1.
Definitely.
Oh god.
You had like there were so many fucking things in Extreme 1 where it's like here are some Roboteers trying to be dicks to each other, and it doesn't work at all. Like it's like you Dr. Zulu being a dick, just that didn't work. I mean, like, Andrew Marchant did a good job of it. Like, Ian Lewis obviously had his rant already recorded, so he could just kind of play off that. But the rest of them were just really bad at being poor sports.
Yeah.
I mean, the whole way they were portrayed, poor Arthur Chilcott, man. Even children were making fun of him. It was bad time. But he got his own back. Mortis goes in, lifts Ming over, and then that disc just flies off.
I don't think it even touches the floor. It just slides off and then hits the ground and rolls away.
Probably nearly hits Jeremy Clarkson in the head again somehow. But we won't go there.
Here's the thing: when it gets turned over, Ming's already fucking dead. Like, it dies in 1 or 2 hits from Mortis' axe. And Mortis' reaction to its opponent dying so easily is to, of course, go attack the house robots again.
Yeah,
of course.
Which results in it going down the pit.
Yeah, and it results in JP having the earliest birthday party ever. He was having the time of his life in that battle. Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
Oh, that's lovely. Oh, that was special.
Unfortunately for Mortis, it wouldn't get much further because it came up against Gravedigger, and here we see for the first time Mortis's true weakness: competent flippers. Mortis easily punches through Gravedigger because Gravedigger's armor is a joke.
Yeah, they're out driving it as well. And they managed to push it into Shunt. And Shunt attacks Gravedigger and punches through it a bit. But then when Gravedigger escapes, Shunt just turns around and attacks Mortis. And I think that's what pinned Mortis' track. Was Shunt attacking it for no reason. And then it can only turn on the spot and gets flipped over and dunked down the pit. And then Gravedigger attacks the house robots.
Yeah, despite obviously being up against this like wedge flipper, which should be a real hindrance for it, as you said, Dan, Mortis was really doing a good job in the early stages here, and it's one of those where if those little moments didn't go against it, it could have easily gone through to the heat final, and then from there it would have been in the weaker semi-final if it beat Dark Destroyer, which it should have. I mean, I highly doubt it would have beaten Stegosaurus, but it's interesting to think how we would have got Mortis in another semi-final over Gravedigger, which quite honestly I'm still quite surprised how it even got into Series 3 considering its design, but...
Series 3 Gravedigger was just shit Cassius.
Yeah.
I mean, when you've got 128 spots to fill, if something turns up that looks like another good robot from last series, you'll probably let them in.
Yeah.
Yeah. Especially since they had stock bots in Series 1. They'd gone from like not having enough entrants to having enough to do like 128 competitors.
Whether they should have done 128 bots that early is another question.
Yeah, series like there are other series that are as long as Series 3, but Series 3 feels that much longer because a lot of the robots in it are crap.
Mortis' Series 3 journey didn't end at Gravedigger though. It entered into the World Championship, and its first fight was against Terra Australis, which...
didn't move.
Yeah.
Yeah, even in this fight though, even against an immobile Terra Australis, you can kind of see why Mortis never did as well as it should have, because Rob Knight was swinging everywhere and still missing against an immobile target. It's weird because Series 3 Mortis in general, you can tell it was much more refined and upgraded, but Rob Knight struggled even more than usual to drive it because it seemed that bit more nimble on the spot and he just kept swerving around. And
he really needed more practice driving it.
And the lifting arm only complicated things for him because he just randomly flew that up in the air and never made use of it really.
Yeah, I'm kind of wondering if they had to cut back on something. They would have had to cut back on something inside to accommodate the extra weight of the lifting arm. So maybe that affected performance.
Yeah, maybe.
But yeah, it won pretty easily against Terra Australis and came up against Behemoth, who flipped him over and pitted him. Because I mean, Behemoth is everything Mortis here. It's a competent flipper bot.
Yeah, I don't think it would have gotten much further anyway, because I mean, let's be honest, it was never going to beat Razor.
I don't know. I would have given him a solid chance, just because perhaps maybe in 2-4, just because there's no way Razor could have damaged the armor.
Yeah, but it had a big gap in the middle of it where the flipper and the axe were.
Ah, yeah, true.
And
because it's a question of what could it do to Razor?
Yeah, but Razor would have probably just grabbed hold of it and fed it to the house robots, which would have, killed it because they're the house robots. And, it's Mortis, so, fuck Mortis.
Yeah.
So, yeah, this is...
Promote Mortis as a really good robot until the later stages, then fuck Mortis.
Yeah.
So, after a pretty disappointing Series 3 performance, they returned for Series 4, again upgraded, and this time their armor was coated in silicon carbide, which... by the standards of the time, was pretty much invincible, nearly.
Yeah. I really like the way Series 4 Mortis looks. It looks really cool.
Oh, absolutely. It was pretty lowly seeded, wasn't it? It was about, like, C23, I believe.
Yes, it was. That is the sharpest drop in seeding that a robot has ever had, except for robots that just lost theirs entirely. Because it went... Because... Series 3 was the one where they didn't do seedings for some reason, wasn't it?
I mean, I think this is kind of... Mortis was the most hyped bot for Series 1, 2, and 3, but after a disappointing showing in Series 3 and the arrival of, like, new, very impressive bots like Chaos 2 and Hypnodisc and Razor, Mortis, the producers kind of had no reason to, like, big up Mortis anymore, so...
Yeah.
So that and the fact that its performance just wasn't very impressive is what really leads to such that fall.
I mean, to be fair, when it comes to in Series 2, it made it to the semis. In Series 3, it made it to the second round. At that point, it had a better track record than Razor did.
Yeah, but Razor was an international champion.
Beating fearsome robots such as Technolees.
That was I'm pretty sure Internationals was the first episode I watched, because I remember Razor just beating up on Technolease and Diosaur. But I mean, to be fair, it won the world championship, which wasn't.
Yeah, that was a legit.
Yeah.
That was a legit tournament.
Yeah. There's still people arguing over its fight with Behemoth today. It was the Razor found themselves on the receiving end of the lax attitude to the pitting rule for once. But Mortis ended up in perhaps probably the dodgiest fucking melee in the entirety of Series 4.
Oh yeah, we had
against Ionor and Mazakari.
We had Mazakari, a disc that was more empty space than actual material, and Ionor, which was just something else entirely in Series 4.
So Mortis immediately goes on the attack and goes up against Mazakari, because Mazakari obviously looks like the bigger threat because it's a spinner. And people had seen what Hypnodisc was capable of at that point. They flip it over, it's invertible. They get under it and drive it into the CPZs, where it gets stuck on top of Mortis. And then Mortis then spends most of the battle trying to get the house robots to dislodge Mazakari from the top of it. Meanwhile, Ionor just goes and fucking dies in the corner. It gets like 2 swings on Mazakari while it's stuck, and otherwise does fuck all. Then is clearly immobilized, gets picked up by Killalot, is seconds away from being dunked down the pit. And then Killalot just decides to not do that and throw it instead. And the judges put Ionor through.
Yeah, what makes this fight even worse, though, is the Ionor guys uploaded the raw footage onto their YouTube account, and there's like an extra 30 seconds of Ionor being clearly immobile and Mortis just carrying Mazakari around, and it's like, oh my god, because you don't have the battle music or JP, you just have this eerie silence. Mortis going, what do I do with this thing on my arm? And Ionor's like, lads, I'm dead. Can we end the fight? It is unbearable.
I can't remember. The Ionor team were pretty shocked they got through that, right?
Oh yeah, definitely.
It's like, yeah.
I feel like you could take the raw footage of some of the more like lackluster fights on Robot Wars and sell them as a kind of like avant-garde existential dark comedy about the futility of life.
Yeah. They make it into the round 2 fight against Crusader 2, probably one of the most overrated robots in the history of the series, because people saw that it was a decent rammer and decided that it clearly could have won, but then its armor must have been fucking plastic, because Mortis just punched through it without any trouble.
Yeah, I mean, Mortis's. If Mortis's axe can cleave right through your robot like that in Series 4, you've gone wrong somewhere.
Yeah. Mortis were clearly out driving them, punched a bunch of holes in the top. Like, Crusader got 1 lift on them, I'll give them that. And then they got shunted into the house robots, and the house robots just took Crusader to pieces, because that's what they fucking did in the early series, because they had 4 of them in the arena, and everything that ended up in a CPZ just got demolished.
Yeah, I mean, Shunt's axe just goes right through Crusader. It's painful to watch.
Yeah, I love watching episodes where like Mortis and Shunt are both axing the same robot, because you'll get Mortis like putting some holes in it, but like they're not particularly big, and then Shunt just comes in and just bang! Now there's a crater in it, because it's just the comparison between what they were able to do with the higher weight allowance for the house robots and the competitors is quite a big gap. Then it ends up against Steg 2 in the Heat final, and
yeah, I think here you see again Mortis does not perform well against flippers.
It's a good fight, though. I mean, Mortis is in the lead for most of the early part, but then once Steg gets a flip in, it's all over.
Well, I mean, the thing is, the lifting arm does what it always seemed to do. It starts malfunctioning and just kind of lifting up and then getting stuck. And once that happens, Steg can finish the fight in a single flip.
Yeah, it gets pitted fairly swiftly.
In a way, it's good for Mortis that it ended here. It had a decent performance, so it can go out with one of those creditable and valiant losses as such. Because imagine it in the semi-finals, it really would have been shown how outdated it was in that semi-final, especially. So
yeah. Who did Steg 2 fight in
Chaos
the
2
first round of the semis?
Chaos 2.
Oh.
Chaos 2.
Oh fuck. Yeah.
We would have seen what a really good flipper does to Mortis.
Mortis wouldn't have been inside the fucking arena.
No.
Just a track flying up.
I wouldn't even say. I wouldn't say it's a problem of Mortis being outdated. It's just that I don't know what it is, but after the arm got lifted, it never seemed to perform as well. Like there was always problems with the drive.
Well, it had 5mm of ground clearance.
Yeah,
so,
that was outdated. Not necessarily the word. It's more the fact it wasn't. It's a design that could be refined, but wasn't quite. It was just as we say, it had a massive ground clearance. I assume that's because of the 80 kg weight limit, though, because they had skirts on for the BattleBots events. And they were 100 kg then, so that would have been interesting if they could have added the skirts. But Mortis was a case of it had the potential always, but Rob Knight wasn't an elite driver, nowhere near, and the robot itself couldn't hold out against these better machines, so it would always come up short.
Yeah.
Thankfully, Mortis got a chance to go out on a real high note in the War of Independence.
Yep. They first they were up against Ghetto Bot, which is an interesting name for a machine.
I think one thing you kind of see with the War of Independence and like other events where American Bots enter is Robot Wars never really got the cream of the American crop.
That's because the cream of the American crop would probably have killed someone in the Robot Wars arena.
Well, I mean, the name Robot Wars didn't have the best reputation over there by then.
Yeah.
Despite the quite interesting American picks, this was probably the best attempt at getting competitive robots over, because sure, they had Ghetto Bot and the Mangulator, which was built in like 2 minutes, but at least they had Frenzy and a super heavyweight in Ramstein, and we had Ming 2, which was very frail, and Detonator. So it was balanced in a way. Still hard for the Americans.
Yeah, it was
but
decent balance.
Yeah.
Detonator's presence was a case of
we need something to go. We need one American bot to go.
Yeah, literally, because they pulled out Hypnodisc from that fight to put Detonator in.
This was I think filmed after Series 4, when Hypnodisc was probably not in the best shape after getting the mullering it took from Pussycat and Shunt in the grand final. And then like it's not like Dartford Grammar School would have been able to enter their Series 4 robot, because Shadow of Napalm fucking fell apart. Like the internals of the robot went into the pit, and the shell stayed on top.
Oh god!
But it creates this weird bit of oddly poetic trivia where Mortis and Detonator's first and last appearances are the exact same episode. So
match made in heaven.
Detonator was still a pile of shit though, so and they put it in against Frenzy.
And after Ghetto Bot, it came up against Panic Attack and won. Yeah,
well, there's a one more thing to note from the fight with Ghetto Bot. Ghetto Bot conks out, gets shoved onto the flame pit, and then gets caught between Mortis, Shunt, and Dead Metal at the same time. And the Ghettobot team fucking love this, apparently. They're just laughing at this thing getting mullered. And Mortis then gets bored and goes off and starts bonking Killalot on the head with the axe. And, and Killalot's head is obviously not that securely attached because it's just wobbling as Mortis.
The invincible Sir Killalot.
Yeah, just poke. But the panic attack fight. It's a really close one.
Yeah, I mean, panic attack's on top, but they just can't take Mortis out.
Yeah. They get some better drives and attacks in, but Mortis got a lot of hits with its axe. But even if they didn't do anything, always seemed to count for some reason. Apparently, there was like 1 point in the decision for the victory.
I can believe that.
I remember seeing in a YouTube comment, Arthur Chilcott commented on it, and he said that this battle was actually 2 fights. He said that...
Really, now?
Yeah, he said that the fight we saw is 2 fights edited into one, where in the first fight, the judges gave it to Mortis, but production wanted Panic Attack through. So, because there was a bit of a clash, they had a rematch, and again, Mortis was given the decision. So, that's an interesting one to figure in, really.
Good old Menton.
Yeah.
Good old Menton.
But
I mean, it kind of would have been. On the one hand, I'm glad Mortis did go through, but on the other hand, it would have been cool to see Panic Attack go through because we would have got a better fight than we got in BattleBots when Panic Attack went against Frenzy and broke down because none of the British bots could get the correct radio frequency or whatever.
Yeah,
that was a really disappointing episode.
Yeah, what makes it even worse for this Panic Attack Mortis battle is that it's one of those fights where Panic Attack feels naturally handicapped by the judge's ruling because Mortis, because its axe is seen as naturally aggressive, it gets damage points and aggression points just by using its axe. Whereas Panic Attack has to control the entire fight to get its aggression points, and obviously it can't cause damage. So, because Panic Attack controls literally all of this fight, it's just Mortis hammering away. That's all Mortis does. But because of the axe being aggressive, it gets damage points and aggression points at the same time. So that's probably what swung it in the end. But it's
probably.
It's
the axe doesn't even do that much damage. It knocks off a light and I don't know, maybe dents Panic Attack a bit, but Panic Attack's too beefy to be damaged by that axe much.
Yeah, I think Arthur Chilcott said they actually broke one of Panic Attack's actuators, so that again may have factored into it. But in terms of Mortis's general hits, it was definitely the number of hits it got in as opposed to consistent damage for sure.
Yeah.
It's like the old BattleBot screens where in the fights with Deadblow they show the fake decision points to get, and then Deadblow will have 140 points or something.
So after its fight with Panic Attack, which is I think is one of the better fights from the pre-weight increase series, it got to the final where it was up against Frenzy. And it dominated Frenzy.
Oh my god, this is such a good fight, such a satisfying fight to watch. Mortis finally showing what it can do.
Yeah, because it just went to fucking town on Frenzy and just never let it get breathing room to line up an attack.
They kept getting Frenzy onto their back, just bashing away, and then Frenzy's weapon motor burns out, and then they just turn them over and start digging in at the base plate. It's so satisfying.
I think it's really it really shows that Mortis is much more suited for BattleBot style robots, where it's against big weapons that it can still tank hits from, and it can exploit ground clearance, because it never really asserted itself against any British robots like it did here, and Frenzy's not anything to be sniffed at either, so
no,
it's really impressive.
Robot.
Yeah, definitely.
Definitely. Yeah, I see what you mean about it definitely suits BattleBots more, because in in Robot Wars, where kind of like flippers and wedges are very prevalent, Mortis can't do anything because those tracks are fragile and that lifting arm always breaks. But in BattleBots, where it's all about just where it's basically about pure damage, Mortis is a much better suit.
Yeah. And the end result of this is that Mortis goes out how Mortis lived, basically, getting beaten up by the house robots.
It's just so good to see them finally win a trophy.
Yeah.
They always had such potential throughout the entire early series, and it always seemed like they should get somewhere, but for whatever reason they just never did. Whether it be Mortis's own unreliability or just nonsense like Series 1 and 2.
Yeah, and then they were planning on bringing Mortis back for Series 7. The only thing we know about the upgrade they were planning was that it would have had wheels instead of treads and potentially a better Streamech. We don't know about the armor, so its armor was pretty decent from the get-go. But
I mean, the only time I've ever seen Mortis get damaged is in their fight against Nightmare in BattleBots, and I mean, Nightmare had a pretty goddamn powerful weapon.
Yeah,
but
Nightmare.
Series 7, even by Series 7 standards, that armor would probably be sufficient.
What wasn't Nightmare the reason they had to put a roof on the battle box?
Yes, yes. It kind of says it all.
Because it launched scrap metal out of the arena.
What a nightmare!
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, that was terrible, and you should feel terrible.
I'm sorry.
Good. Yeah, I don't know how well Mortis would have held up come Series 7 time. Maybe it could have.
Yeah, I mean, I imagine there would have been some. I imagine there would have been some increase in the power of the axe, because otherwise it wouldn't do anything to most Series 7 bots.
It would probably have had the skirts on, which would have helped its ground clearance problem because of the weight increase. Yeah, the axe would have had to be completely reworked. But
yeah,
it feels like one of those robots that if it did enter Series 7, it would be that bit more reliable with wheels potentially and reworked, but it would still probably lose on the judge's decision in the second round or heat final or something. But
yeah,
I'm sure it could have held its own.
Yeah, it would have been cool to see Mortis back. But I believe currently the robot is kept by Arthur Chilcott when he does his lectures and stuff. Or is it in a shed now?
No, I think it got sold to. I think it made its way through a couple of teams, and now we don't actually know where it is. But I mean, there's no way we're ever seeing Mortis back, because Rob Knight is not the kind of guy who goes back to an old design. We've seen what he does in BattleBots.
Yeah. We won't be seeing Mortis again, probably.
If we saw Mortis again, it'd be like sentient.
Yeah, but I don't. If even whoever has it now, they're not going to enter it into like Series 11 or anything, because it would just get destroyed. Because even the toughest of the robots from the old series probably couldn't stand up to the modern spinners. Well, Storm 2, I suppose, but Storm 2 is kind of a different thing to something like Mortis. So that's kind of it for Mortis. But at least it went out on a high note. It had a solid victory against a robot that was actually actually a good robot and not just something crap that won on a technicality or whatever, but because there are plenty of robots that were once good that end their careers in a slightly dismal and disappointing way. Like
we're gonna come across a lot of them.
Yeah, I mean
during this podcast.
Oh boy, yes. Razor in Series 8. Let's be fair, going out in round 1 of the first heat was probably not the end that had been envisioned for it, but at the same time, it's better than it going out in the next round after getting its beak torn off by Carbide. So
we'll get to that.
Eventually.
Yes.
Series 5, because I don't think we've explained the exact order for doing this, but considering we're now at the end of our Series 1 era coverage, at least as far as individual robots go, basically we're generally putting robots where in the series where they did the best. So the champions are each covered in the series that they won. So Razor for Series 5, Tornado for Series 6. I think Chaos 2 is getting covered in Series 2. Not Series 2, Series 3, even though it won Series 4 as well, because there were plenty of other good robots to discuss in Series 4, whereas there's less so for Series 3. But yeah, that's how we're going to approach this. So this is the last of our individual Series 1 robot episodes, because we covered Mortis here, even though it did better in Series 2, because there were only 2 other good robots in Series 1. So
do not insult Psychosprout like that.
Well,
I will not have Psychosprout slander on this podcast.
Psychosprout will be one of the robots we're discussing next week, because we'll be covering the notable and also crap robots of Series 1.
Obviously, Psychosprout not in the latter category.
Definitely not. So you'll be seeing the other Heat finalists that didn't return in some form, some other robots that are just interesting to talk about, and Psychosprout. Because clearly Psychosprout was the best robot and could have gone far.
Well, I mean, in conclusion, I just want to say that Mortis is just an example of an incredibly sophisticated bot, and it really tells you something about Rob Knight, who, as a builder, is always someone who just strives to innovate and go further than anyone else has gone. Because, I mean, Mortis shows up in Series 1 and 2, at a time when people are throwing in fucking aluminium boxes. He turns up with a tracked Axbot armoured in basically invincible armour for the time. And then you see it again in BattleBots, where everyone's bringing in vertical spinners, and he brings in a humanoid robot controlled by like motion control or something. I'm not quite sure what the name would be, but
oh god,
yeah, you definitely see in Mortis how Rob Knight is always striving to push boundaries.
Yeah, he deserves a lot more credit than he got. He didn't deserve to be the fucking whipping boy for Series 3.
No,
absolutely not.
No, just an all-round good guy, good to have on the show. Great character with a robot that always had the potential to do well, but wasn't quite as refined as some of the elites, so didn't quite make the last step. But no, a really good robot, really good competitive robot, notable and memorable as well. So
yeah. And probably really one of the best robots of the early series. I mean, I do think it's probably better than Roadblock, just as what it does. I mean, Roadblock won mainly on the fact that it was a very low, very large wedge that nothing could really touch. But as an actual combat robot, Mortis's design was one that stood the test of time slightly better.
Yeah. Roadblock was the low wedge that was reliable and could win in the early series. Mortis was always competitive in some form. It just had its little flaws that didn't make it elite. So, as you say,
Mortis. I like to think of it as Mortis won on its strength, whereas Roadblock won on other bots' weaknesses. Namely the fact that that bots back then they weren't invertible, or they couldn't self-right, and they didn't really have an answer for a wedge.
Yeah, and its sheer size helped it as well, because there was little that could get to grips with it.
Yeah.
But yeah, so probably one of the best robots that we've covered so far. Probably the best robot we've covered so far. Let's be honest.
We'll cover a lot there.
Well, yeah. We're getting into Series 2 after that special, and we're starting that with a particularly good robot. So yeah.
Alright, so that's it for Mortis, and next week we'll come through with the most notable bots of Series 1. Let's just put it like that.
Yeah.
Alright, bye everyone.
Goodbye.
Bye.